One has to have an open mind. Open doors don't close doors. Be curious. Apply for a lot of things.
How do you open the doors in the first place?
If there are 5 things that you could be applying for, apply for all 5. You don't know what you're going to get and what you're not going to get. Life is a mix of serendipity and planning. There isn't a perfect job. What I think people should be looking for their first job, to be challenged and to be stretched. People are happiest, I think, as a general matter, when they're learning.
Absolutely.
Hi, I'm Clare Scherrer, the Chief Financial Officer of Smith's Group, with about 15,000 employees worldwide, and this is my Duvet flip.
What is your advice to anyone looking after their personal finances?
Live below your means. You need to put money away for a rainy day, and we live in the UK, Jack. It rains a lot, meaning that other little piece that you're setting aside is for fun things that you want to do so that you can go on a vacation that you want.
I hear you loud and clear.
In your career, there will be moments when you don't get something that you strived very hard for, you don't get a promotion that you thought you deserved. The Roger Federer example. In his professional career, he won 80% of the matches, but he only won 54% of points. When you're in the game, you're trying to win the point. If you've lost it, you don't have time to dwell on it. You're not going to be the right mindset to play the next point that's ahead of you. So anytime you're facing a moment where things didn't go right, chin up. How I handle this reflects on me and will influence what opportunities I have going forward.
Wow. What's your duvet flip? What gets you out of bed in the morning to flip the duvet?
So the first thing is,
So welcome, Claire. How are you? I've been so excited to have you on Duvet Flip. When I reached out, I was like, I need you to come on the show, and we've made it happen.
I'm great. Thank you for asking.
Where did your life begin, your working life begin? What was your first job? What was it? What did it pay in terms of pay forward, in terms of learnings? What would you be saying to young Claire that you didn't know before you went into that job that you want to know now?
So my first job, I grew up in a wonderful farming community in Iowa. So my very, very first job, I had 3 jobs when I was in high school. I scooped ice cream, I detasseled corn on a local farm, and I babysat. And it paid minimum wage, and it was about saving money to go to the best university I could go to. So that was my first job. Now, post-university, my first job was working at a consulting firm. Why? I didn't study anything related to business at university. I studied languages and I studied government and a little bit of economics. And my degree was called government. And why? Because I had been part of a student exchange program. It opened my eyes to a bigger world than where I had grown up. And I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful to have a career where I could travel and meet people and have influence in a broader sphere? However, in my second to last year at university, I went on a blind date and I got engaged after 9 weeks. I've now been married 33 years to the gentleman whom I got engaged to after 9 weeks, but that was a change I wasn't expecting. I then had to find a job in New York City because that's where my husband was living and working. So my approach was, I need to find a job in New York City. And what I didn't do was close doors. I just opened every door that I could. I said progress over perfection. I don't have to have the perfect first job. I just want to have a job that's challenging, where I'm working with good, i.e. high integrity and interesting people. And I was fortunate enough that my very first job was in management consulting. That was terrific. And you asked me, what would I tell young Claire? I'll tell you the most valuable lesson that I learned in my first job in management consulting. I worked with a brilliant engagement manager, and she taught me to think critically, although she didn't say it like that. What she said was very simple, but profound, which is she said, you can come to me and you can ask me any question, but only if you tell me what you think the answer is. So as a young person in my first job, not knowing what I was doing. I was a green bean. I was often going in and saying, what should we do next week? Or we've encountered this dilemma or this delay, what should we do? What I wasn't doing initially was saying, and I think we should do the following. And then asking, what do you think? So it was a very simple thing, but she trained me that when I came into her office, I needed to put forth my own thinking. Sometimes I was right, sometimes I was way off base, but it stayed with me for life. And even today, when I'm getting ready to present to our board of directors, I think about what are the 3 or 5 questions they're going to ask me. Am I looking around corners? Am I prepared for this conversation to go off piste, to go in a direction that other people may want to take it?
Young Clare kept going forward with a positive attitude, a positive mind, and said, you know what, I'm going to keep my options open and I'm just going to give it a go and see what happens. But most importantly, and we see it time and time again, we get about 10,000 young people reach out a week for a job, to work somewhere. Can you help us get a job? And they want perfect. And there's no such thing as a perfect job. And I loved how you growing up said, you know what? Progress over perfection, because that just gives you a whole new way of thinking, right? Because we always say, okay, I want it perfect. I want it perfect. But is there such a thing called perfect?
Everything you said is spot on. One has to have an open mind. And when I say open doors, don't close doors, don't not apply for something because of something you've read in the newspaper or a preconception you have. Be curious, apply for a lot of things, learn about it as you go. And many companies have apprenticeship programs, internship programs. They can teach you what you need to know. So also don't close doors because you think you're not qualified. So there's many reasons to keep doors open. You may not really understand what an industry is, what the opportunity is. You may think you're not qualified, but don't count yourself out. So many people are looking for core fundamental values or capabilities as opposed to specific vocational training. But at its essence, a lot of employers are looking for people who, in my case for finance, are facile with numbers, but it's addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. It's not higher maths. At the same time, coupled with people who like people. Can you engage with people? Do you have empathy? Do you care about them? Can you distill complex calculations or concepts into clarity? So it's just important that you don't close doors and say, that's not for me. One interesting fact about me is that 2.5 years ago, I took on a new challenge, which is to become Chief Financial Officer of Smiths Group, a UK-based global engineering company. It's interesting because I did so after a 25-year successful career in investment banking. And the interesting lesson is that no matter where you are in your career journey, whether you're just starting out or whether you're very seasoned in your profession, it's very important to have an open mind when new opportunities come your way.
How do you open the doors in the first place? That's one of the questions that young people will be sitting here, and now I'm prejudging what they're going to be thinking is, okay, Claire's told us today to keep the doors open, good, but how do I get the door open in the first place? What is your advice to anyone who's been applying for work or wants to build a network? They might be in uni, they might not. How do you actually physically go about to open that door in the first place?
You want to look expansively and think about using every route of knowledge that's available to you. So the first part is don't close any doors. So if there are 5 things that you could be applying for, apply for all 5. Don't prejudge 4 of them aren't perfect. I'm only going to go for what's perfect. First, because the world's competitive. You don't know what you're going to get and what you're not going to get. Second, because your preconceived notions may not prove out to be the fact. But whatever your school has, if friends and family have an idea, what's in your community, what's around the corner. So you want to just be looking at everything. When I had to find a job in New York City, I just applied to every company that was hiring in New York City. I didn't try to narrow things too quickly. I just wanted to see what my exploration would lead me toward. You can't plan everything. Life is a mix of serendipity and planning. And every life is some of both. You need to be a planner, but you also need to sometimes be a person that's open to new experiences, open to going with the flow. But if you're putting a lot of markers down, you're trying to open a lot of doors, almost more important is if the door is open and there's an application, there's an interview. That's where you really need to think about how can I prepare and show that I brought preparation to the discussion. So one of the things, and Jackie Robinson, the great baseball player, said life isn't a spectator sport. So any meeting you're going to, whether it's your first day on the job or you're 25 years into the job, you're at that meeting for a reason. So show up, speak up, be a part of the meeting. Let me break that down. So show up. There's a saying that I have, which is, if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. So show up, be the first one in the room, be sitting at the table, you're gonna get out of it what you put into it. Then the second thing, which I really want young people to do, is don't just show up, speak up. That's sometimes really hard for people to do when they're new, when they're learning the job. They feel that I'm the youngest or the least experienced person sitting around the table, but often the youngest or least experienced person around the table has familiarity with the granularity of data or has prepared in a way for the meeting which is very different than I have. Speak up. So this is also a valuable lesson that I learned very early in life. In addition to think critically, think about what you would do before you ask a question, it was also speak up. It's not so scary or risky to speak up, but sometimes having a voice is the thing that younger people in their job are wrestling with having the confidence to do. And I used to give young people who worked for me a trick. I would say, write on your notepad, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Your goal is to speak up 5 times in this meeting. Every time you do it, cross a number off. You did it once, then you do it second. And because what happens is practice breeds comfort and confidence. So the first time is scary, the second time is less scary, the second meeting is more familiar. And as you go, because having a voice is what creates influence. So I've said quite a bit, but if we just step back, don't be too discerning. There isn't a perfect job. At the end of the day, what I think people should be looking for their first job, and frankly for every job, is to be challenged and to be stretched, to be learned. People are happiest, I think, as a general matter when they're learning. But so there's no job that's perfect. Progress over perfection. Get your resume out, get out there. When you get a fish on the hook, make sure you're prepared for the interview, put your best self forward, show that you've given it some thought. And then when you land the job, also think about your first days on the job, also like an interview. Show up, speak up.
It can be really easy, and I see it time and time again. I only employ 155 people, but I see it time and time again. In people will come in and they will try and run a 100-meter race, a sprint, when actually it's a marathon and things take time. And then you try and be this superhero, and then you stop, and then people start saying, "Oh, Jack, what's wrong with Jack? Is he having a bad day? What's wrong with Claire? She used to be a bit more." How do you balance it? What's your advice?
Be challenged but not overwhelmed. So let's focus on that for a second, because sometimes the two are quite close. Sometimes if Jack is to have Jack feel challenged, he takes on more, and you don't know when you're getting close to the tipping point of all of a sudden you've tipped over a little bit too much and you feel overwhelmed. So one of the things I say to everyone whom I work with, who works for me, I say I am not a mind reader. And this is a really important thing. Often people think, well, my manager must know what's going on in my life personally, must read my face, must understand what I'm dealing with, that I'm a bit overwhelmed. No, in fact, people are not mind readers. So it's very important when I talk about having a voice, I mean that in many ways. I was talking narrowly earlier about having a voice in a meeting, about the substance and the perspective you bring. There's another part to having a voice, which is what are you wrestling with? What are you doing? Because it's about having the right balance in your life, and balance is about having enough challenge but not feeling overwhelmed. And that's mental health. That's well-being. And organizations that help people navigate that will retain employees because people remember that. What do we remember? Sure, you remember signing a major contract. Sure, you remember solving a customer's problem. But what I think every person remembers most is when it's personal. When you were very stressed out and then someone came and said, Jack, don't be stressed out. We've got this. We've got this together. We'll sort it out. That is what creates glue for people because companies are people.
I totally agree. You know, when you talk about, yes, the contract, the big win's great in the moment, but it's the personal things that you remember. I remember joining in my first job after my apprenticeship, my first proper job. I joined this recruitment agency and I walked in and my manager he was a different character. I got in there and I sat down and he said, stand up. I was like, okay. So I stood up. He said, let me check what you're wearing in front of all my team. We're only a team of 12 on a desk. He said, skinny ties are banned from here. I was like, okay, I didn't know. I didn't own a tie before. Anyway, that really embarrassed me and I felt really low, but I just sat down and I got on with my work. Anyway, that lunchtime, he said, you come in lunch with me. So we went to lunch and he took me to TM Lewin. And he bought me loads of new ties. And it was just amazing. And that was the start of the bond of him mentoring me. Anyway, 2 weeks later, someone was here to meet our CEO. So I went and told Sue Cooper, who's the CEO, oh, there's a fantastic person to come and meet you. And she said, I'll be out in a minute. And then as I went to close the door, because she was in a meeting with some other senior people, she went, Jack, by the way, I love how you dress. You're one of the smartest people here. And it's that moment that just went, you know what? Nothing else matters. Yeah. But it was that manager that in that moment where I could have felt overwhelmed and stressed made me help me.
Right.
And it just reminded me, and I've never told that story live, but it just reminded me of what you said. It's the personal moments, right?
It is. It's when people say something that's genuine, that's personal, and to an extreme, if someone can help you with your health, with your children, those are the things that people remember.
And what is your advice to any young person who may experience the same, what I experienced when in my first job?
I would say two things. The first thing is, there's a saying, water off a duck's back. It's an easier saying to say than to sometimes do in the moment when someone has just hurt your feelings or not been very gracious or polite. But you just need to be water off a duck's back and move on. And then in your career, there will be moments when you don't get something that you strived very hard for. You lose a contract you've been really competing hard for. You don't get a promotion that you thought you deserved. And here I would say two things. One is the Roger Federer example. So I just read some fascinating statistics about him, which is in his professional career. So he won 80% of the matches, but he only won 54% of points. So even a world-class tennis player is only winning a little bit more than 50% of the points.
Wow.
What does that tell you? It means when you're in the game, this was really interesting perspective he shared. When you're in the game, you're really in the moment, you're trying to win the point. But if you've lost it, you don't have time to dwell on it. Because if you're dwelling on it, the second point's going by and you're not going to be the right mindset to play the next point that's ahead of you. So you have to be in the moment, but when then something doesn't go right, you need to have a little moment, but get it in the rearview mirror and start focus on what is coming up ahead of you. And I just thought that was a really interesting statistic to put it in perspective.
Absolutely.
The second thing that I would say is, whenever I haven't achieved something that I wanted to achieve, how I handle the disappointment and how I see other people handle disappointment says more about me or says more about them than when you succeed. Because how one is gracious, how one is professional, that reflects more on a person. It's easy to be successful, right? That's great. People are giving you champagne, they're patting you on the back. That's great. It's when you don't succeed in something where you want to have a private moment because you're human, then You think about, what did I learn from it? So there has to be a quick learning moment, but then you need to get on with, how am I going to carry on? And I often, when I'm thinking about quality of people that I'm working with, that always tells me more about their ability to deal with tomorrow's challenge, how they dealt with today's challenge. So anytime you're facing a moment where things didn't go right, rather than thinking, woe is me, you should think about, chin up, how I handle this reflects on me and will influence what opportunities I have going forward. So turn your lemons into lemonade. And now I'd like to share an interesting fact about Smith's Group. So at Smith's, innovation is our lifeblood. And I like to say, we look at both the microscope and the telescope. So as an engineering company, the microscope is, what are we doing today with the products and the people we have to solve our customers' problems today? The telescope is, what are we doing today that sets us up for what we need to be in 3 to 5 years? There's also an interesting read across to careers, because sometimes you're in a job where your focus should be, how do I do this job to the best of my ability with excellence? How do I reach my full potential in this job? There are other occasions when you're needing a new challenge, and what you need to be doing is thinking about the telescope. What should you be doing in 3 to 5 years? And what are you doing today that sets you up to get where you want to be in 3 to 5 years?
I want to talk a little bit about your role as CFO. Like, what is a CFO? What does it mean to you? We've had previous CFOs on, but it's different in every organisation, different businesses. What's a CFO, and what's your advice to anyone who wants to get into finance?
At its heart, my role as the Chief Financial Officer is to look after the financial goals and objectives of the company. But let's take it to a higher level. So a company will have a strategy. Where does the company want to be in 3 to 5 years at a strategic level? If you take it down a level, what operational choices, decisions, and actions around the world through all the different functions need to be taken to get from point A to point B, that you achieve your strategy. And then if you think about finance, we have 2 jobs to support the operational decisions and ultimately the strategy. I think about finance as protecting and propelling. How do we protect? Are the numbers correct? Are we doing the correct accounting? Are we reporting in a fair and balanced and accurate way? How are we managing risk? How are we sweeping the cash to the center? How are we investing the cash? How are we making sure that we are doing everything correctly? You can think of all of that in the protect column. The other column is, how do we propel? So that's, how do we enable? How do we do analysis that enables better decisions at the operational level and support the strategic? So that's the analysis. How do we provide the funding to enable the investment to get us to where we want to be? So that's what makes it fun, because it's inherently linked. It's not a function that's on its own. It's inherently linked and critical to supporting the operational decisions and ultimately the strategy and how we get from A to B. And it's fun because it's fun to be the person that makes sure things are done correctly and that you're protecting, that you're risk mitigating. But it's equally fun to say, but I'm part of making things happen.
You know that saying when they say, if you really want to get to a sense of truth, follow the money. Follow the money. How true is that? How do you see that as CFO? And because I think how you've said it, it shows that actually, if young people want to build a career in business, then the financial department, a team function, can be such an incredible way to, 1, follow the money, but 2, understand how a corporate works, right?
Well, a different way of saying what you said is, the numbers don't lie. So sometimes you can be a person who's a very gifted orator. You can say things it sounds very slick, it sounds very good, but if the numbers don't back up what the words are saying, there's a disconnect. So accounting, finance, they're terrific, fundamental jobs to have. You may do them and say, this isn't what I want to do for 5 years, 10 years, or 15 years, but you would for sure say, it's been great training. I've learned some sound fundamentals that will help me do other jobs in a better way, a more structured and thoughtful way, and I'll be able to marry up operations or marketing or human resources with the financial lens. So any way you cut it, even if it's not something you'll be doing for decades, it will be a foundational skill that will help you do other jobs better because the numbers don't lie.
And in those other jobs like marketing, they still need to put a budget together for a campaign. Whether you're a social media, you want to become a social media manager and you're doing paid ads, where you need to put a business case together on why you're going to do social ads with this influencer or whatever. And that all leads back down to what's the budget, what's the impact and return on investment, A, B, and C, right? So actually having a core understanding of accounting, finances helps.
No matter what you want to do, you have to put a plan together. You have to figure out where you're going to get your funding. If you're an entrepreneur, where you're going to get your funding means external third-party investors. And if you're going to pitch them, they don't want to just hear an idea. They want to hear how the idea translates into a credible but ambitious plan and how the funding for that credible but ambitious plan is going to earn them a return. How's that return compared to other things? So that's one extreme. The other extreme is you're a division within a company. You still need to put together the plan that says, how is what I'm doing getting the right return within the framework of this company and how they're allocating capital. So that's exactly right. A job in finance is a great first step, no matter what you choose to do in life.
And where would you say, if you were starting in finance again, what would you say to young people tuning in now, where to start? Because finance is not just finance, there's different departments within finance that you can do. Where would you recommend people start? And I asked the same question to the CFO of BAE Systems, BAE Systems, and I don't think he gave me a proper answer because he said all departments are great.
So I can't use the all departments are a great answer.
Where would you start again? Like, if the aim was to build an incredible career within finance, where would be a good starting point?
Well, let's start first by talking about what are the various options for starting points. So maybe using a framework I mentioned a few minutes ago, there's protect and propel. Every function does some of both. Sometimes it's just different weighting. So if you were to do accounting, reporting, internal audit, you're a little bit more in the protecting camp. And so it depends if that's what really interests you. If you get a lot of personal satisfaction from doing things correctly and exactly correct, and you know, if that gives you personal satisfaction. On the other side of the ledger, financial planning and analysis. How do I put together a budget? How do I think about analysis? If you enjoy noodling on things, if you enjoy modeling things, what if A, what if B, how could that be? And then there's also acquisitions. So if you think about, am I really interested in how could 1 + 1 = 3? So what is the right place to start? Of course, like your guest from BAE said, they're all interesting. And I'm going to go back and say progress over perfection. Don't worry about trying to pick which pocket is right for you. Just get your foot in the door. And then most people like coffee. I've never met a coffee I don't like. My advice would be have coffee with your colleagues. So I still try to do this. I don't have time every day to take someone for coffee, meet someone for coffee, but I try to once a week. And when I was younger, I tried to do it more than once a week, which is often people are working in a silo. How do you pick yourself up and say, what are my finance colleagues doing in their other silos? So that we break down the silos. Sometimes you're in a job where you're at a level where you have visibility, but often when you start, you're often in a silo. So coffee is a great way to
break the silos.
So Jack, I'm working in internal audit. You're working in acquisitions. Can I just tell you what I'm working on this week, respecting confidentiality, but what are you working on this week? This is what I do day to day. What are you doing day to day? Because we often think we have to look upwards to get inspiration or advice, when in fact, sure, look upwards, but look outwards.
So I'm hearing loud and clear, all departments, it doesn't matter where you start, but just go in, have some coffee with people, learn what other people are doing, yes, you're in your silo, but learn someone else's silo, and then that breaks the silo over coffee. So it doesn't matter where you start, but just go in and give it a go. Just
give it a go. And then think about, what do I think I might want to do next? This was pretty good. I like this. This is less to my liking. This is more to my liking. No job is perfect. There's no person in the world who says every day of the week, every week of the month, my job is perfect. No one says that. What you want is the majority, the vast majority of the experience to be one that you're really loving, that you're really getting energy out of it. But it's also important to think, well, what about this? What about that? What other thing could I do? What could I explore? How do you know what to explore? A really key way that you think and get exposure to what to explore is your peers. And I also would like to share an interesting fact about the engineering sector. So at its essence, engineering is about solving the toughest problems. Therefore, diversity is important in engineering because we're more ambitious and more capable the more experience, perspectives, and leadership styles we have around the table. And the read across from what we do in engineering to thinking about your career is, in engineering, generally, we're running toward problems, and we love it when we can solve a tough problem. The same thing in your career. The people who really stand out for me and distinguish themselves are people who run toward problems, who say, how can I help? And who are all about solving problems. It's very easy to run toward opportunities when things are going well. It's more challenging, and you can distinguish yourself more if you're a person who takes on a challenge and is a problem solver.
You're around numbers and money and talking about financials left, right, and center in your job. Yeah. What is your advice to anyone looking after their personal finances? Because right now, I'm doing a lot, and the team are doing a lot of data, and we're talking to banks, government, and all in between. And there's a big mismatch at the moment, especially here in the UK. Money is hush hush. It's a dirty word. You don't talk about money, and people don't feel comfortable about talking about money here in the UK. Young people school doesn't teach you to pay for life. And they don't understand. A lot of young people, we put over 105,000 young people into work, and 19,000 of them we had to help set up the bank account. They don't know how to read their first payslip. What's your advice? We call it money powers. What is your money power tip to young people? And just for reference, there's a disclaimer on this video for people to take their own financial advice, that it's only an opinion, and it's what has worked for you.
I'm going to give 2 money tips. The first one is live below your means. Whatever your means are, live below your means, because you need to put money away for a rainy day. And we live in the UK, Jack. It rains a lot.
It does, doesn't it?
And this is the thing. When you're starting out and you know I'm going to make X, people have a tendency to think I can spend X. You can't spend X. Firstly, you will have underestimated everything that life costs for the basics, and probably you spend a lot more on frivolities than you think you do. So from the beginning, you need to think about what percent can I every month, without question, it just goes straight into some form of savings. And that's your rainy day fund. And as I said, it rains a lot. So if you make that plan,
so that savings is your umbrella.
Day. It's your umbrella. Oh, good one.
You like
That's
that,
a good one. I like
you?
that. That's your umbrella. Now, here's the other thing. Once you've made the plan, just take a minute and go, what if I wanted to save 25% more? What would I have to do differently? Do I need another roommate? Do I need to go out for dinner one less time a month? What do I need to do differently that I could save even, 25% more is a big number. So it's not going to be easy. It's probably not going to be one less coffee, one less dinner. It's probably going to be something like get a different roommate, have a different commute, do something more fundamentally differently. But if the first chunk of savings is your umbrella, can the second chunk of savings be your beach ball? Meaning that other little piece that you're setting aside is for fun things that you want to do that require some savings so that you can do them, so that you can go to the Olympics, so that you can go on a vacation that you want. So the point is, if you start creating these habits, then later in life, the habits are just ingrained.
I hear you loud and clear. And you know what? The day you walk out your home and you wish you bought the umbrella, right? It's make it an habit, bring it with you. So your money power tips is have an umbrella and have a beach ball. Umbrella meaning what can you save? What changes can you make? Start small, make it just one less cup of tea or coffee a week, then build that in until you might have to relocate or whatever you want to do to get to where you want to be. But then have the beach ball in terms of what else can you do to take it to the next level.
And then I have another tip, which is before you take a big financial decision, sleep on it for 3 nights.
3 nights? Why
3 nights? Because if it's a difficult choice, your mind will flip-flop. Your mind will change. So if you're thinking about, should I take on this mortgage? Should I move to this more expensive rental? Should I buy this car? Should I buy this cheaper car? Sometimes in the moment, you want to do what's the most, this is a cool car. I want this car. I want to lease this car. Or I want to rent in this neighborhood because I like this neighborhood. But sometimes if you just say, let the emotion pass, let the excitement of the decision pass, what's the financially sound decision to make? It's sometimes the less exciting decision in the short term that sets you better up for the long term. So if you're taking a really important decision, sleep on it, ask other people for advice, just get other perspectives, take your time. When people tend to make irresponsible decisions, it tends to be because they do them in the moment, they do them very quickly, they feel under pressure. It's better to just take a deep breath. Usually if something passes you by, it's because it wasn't meant to be. There's something better coming down the road. So often people fear missing out. Oh, this good deal is going to get away from me. When in fact, just take a deep breath and take your time.
I love that. I'm just, as an entrepreneur, I'm just reflecting. I'm going to use that everywhere I go. You know what? If someone offers me to come and speak on stage, ask me again in 3 days. Because if I'm still motivated about it in 3 days, then I'll do it. Because I like to say yes to help everyone. So actually, because I normally say, thank you for the opportunity. It sounds very great. Give me 24 hours and come back to me. But you know what? Give me 3 days. Message me again in 3 days' time and see what mood I'm in. Because if I've eaten a bag of Maltesers, I'm saying yes. Mm-hmm. If it's raining outside and I've been a stressed day, I'm just going, I don't know. You know what? Claire told me to say 3 days. Final question, because we've been speaking for an hour now, and it's just been fascinating. What's your duvet flip? What gets you out of bed in the morning to flip the duvet?
So a few minutes ago, I said, everyone loves a good coffee. So the first thing is I need a good strong coffee. And I'm going to quote Dolly Parton in her famous song. I don't know if you know the song but she says, tumble out of bed and stumble into the kitchen. I'm going to pour myself a cup of ambition.
There you go.
And every morning when I wake up and I pour my coffee, I always think about this wonderful song. And I think I'm pouring myself a cup of ambition. For me, my cup of coffee is when I think about what's my ambition for the day. What am I going to accomplish? What priorities do I have? What are the challenges I'm going to get after? It's where I set what I'm going to do for the day. And it's important that you get after what's important first, not what you like first, not what's easy first. And so that's one thing that marks my morning. Now, a more fundamental answer to your question is what causes me to flip my duvet off. At Smith's, it's the what, the who, and the how. What, who, how. So what is it we're doing? We're trying to solve some of the world's toughest challenges for energy efficiency, for security. Who? I'm doing it with a bunch of passionate people, 15,000 passionate colleagues, and passion is contagious. I bet you like being around people who are energized and passionate about what they're doing because it rubs off. And then it brings out the best in you, which is my last point. And that's my last point, which is how. And so also what I love about my job is how we go about doing it, which is we talked in this discussion about bring your best self. But the other thing we also talked about was bring out the best in others. And so if you can have a job, a career where you feel like you're doing something meaningful in terms of the what, with passionate people in terms of the who, and the how is you're bringing your best self, and people are trying to help you get your best self, and you're trying to help others reach their potential. It's a magical combination.
I love that. And you said to me off camera, I know you won't mind, is I want you to be an ambassador and come away. And I have. And I think, you know what, anyone that wants to go and look at a career in engineering, look at a career in a fantastic organisation, they just have to look at you and look at you as the CFO, go to Smith's Group, check out the website. Look, I know we've not gone in and talked about Smith's Group. I don't think we've needed to today, because I think just you yourself, and they can go onto the website, they can go to your careers site. I just want to say thank you for your kindness, your honesty, your sound bites and golden nuggets are brilliant. I'm going to go and listen to Dolly Parton, but I just want to say thank you. And just to reflect, open the doors, speak up in the meeting rooms, go and have coffees and break the silos, have the umbrella and the beach ball, and get up and have a cup of tea or coffee in the morning.
Pour your ambition every morning.
There you go. So thank you.
Thank you.
Che vuoi gira largo da me, non sai che oramai è finita con te. Tu sei quella che mi fa passare soltanto